Doug is here. Thank you so much again for doing this for us. It's going to be an open format, everyone, and please ask many questions as possible.
Hi, Doug.
Hi.
Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I was looking on my screen to see who I could find the mouth that was moving.
Well, I'm Tylon from Pennsylvania. Thank you for being here and taking my question, Doug. I really appreciate it. So my question has to do with beings being the owner of their actions and sort of personal responsibility and karma. So I have a kind of a big decision, coming up like later today that sort of, has been like looming heavily on me, and I've sort of been like thinking about like personal responsibility and, because this decision is like going to have a big impact, not just on myself, but on another person as well. So I'm just sort of, and when you were talking at the beginning about the mind running like a banshee, that's sort of been me the last 24 hours. Yeah, so I'm just really curious to get your perspective on all this and sort of how to approach it, or, what's really important.
So I could imagine everybody thinking, so what is it he's trying to decide? It's okay.
I'm happy to go into more detail if it'll be helpful.
It might be, because a lot depends. I mean, a couple of things I would say, just sort of in general, is we are the owners of our actions is implies that we've got a self, and so there's a certain amount of delusion in that. But what it's really about is that the actions and the energies that run through the system have a kind of momentum, and so it's not that we necessarily own it or have control of it any more than we have control of our thoughts, but how we relate to all that, does have an ongoing effect, and so it's actually really helpful to be aware of that. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about being present, and that's true, and that's great, but there's also this effect over time, and just realize it has momentum. So I am curious if you could say a little bit about, what the decision is you're trying to make, because it could make a big difference.
Sure. Yeah, it's basically whether or not to take the next step in a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's simple and uncomplicated, right? Everybody is. It's sort of it begs the question that I don't want to pry, but it's what comes to my mind is, so what is the next step? I assume it has to do with making a deeper commitment on some level.
Right. Yeah, a deeper commitment and sort of more closely tying our lives together and sort of potentially making like moves, like geographic moves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I assume moving into closer proximity, or both of you moving someplace new.
Right. It just feels like such a big responsibility.
And how do you relate to that sense of responsibility?
It feels very like heavy, and like I need to make the right decision, like there is a right decision, and like I need to make that, whatever that is.
Yeah. So it would take a long time and a lot of details for me to even get close to what the right decision is. However,
Sure.
how you relate to it, that sort of, that weightiness, etc. As we all know, that weightiness can have a way of contracting the mind,
Definitely.
as opposed to, the meta that opens stuff out. And it's not like you can say, okay, I want to be open, and it happens. It's we don't really own the mind. We identify with it a lot, but it just does its own thing. But how you relate to that. So one thing that would be really helpful to do is to, how can I say this? To relax into and open up to the feeling of weightiness.
Mm.
I was going through this thing for a couple of days with a difficult relationship that I have. And I was kept on trying to figure out, what's the best thing to do and how do I do this? And, and I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher. So what would a spiritual teacher do? But that's, it's all that kind of stuff. And at some point I sort of realized there's, don't you know Byron Katie?
Yeah, the work.
Yeah, the work. So she's one of these. It's sort of in the genre of motivational teacher, but she's really, really very wise. And she said, when you fight reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And so for me, that's an invitation to actually sort of open up and look deeply and see what's real. And when I did this with this other person, I realized I was angry. And I was feeling a little hurt and sort of angry, and I didn't think it was justified, so it was all this wrestling. But actually, deep down underneath, the truth was I was ticked off. And so what I did, it may sound counterintuitive, but just relaxed into the anger. Just kind of opened up and let it be there and relaxed into it. And the anger got stronger, but I felt myself grinning like an idiot. It was this huge smile that came up. The anger was there, and this huge smile, and just because I wasn't fighting it anymore. And from that place, it was like easier to see in a fuller way what might be the next step, which is not moving someplace with this person, by the way. But so from the standpoint of meditation, we're oftentimes looking for what an answer is to this situation. But what the meditation really is about creating the space inside that's open and receptive to whatever the heck is going on. And if you're ticked off, or if you're scared, or if there's, or if you're worried, it can be really, really helpful. First of all, just to notice what the states are, but even more important, to be aware of what the mind is doing with it. Worrying, thinking, contemplating, arguing. Hindrances are always in the past and the future. And so as much as you can get in the present, verbs are usually in the present. So you notice the process of what's going on. And then within that process, you see if there's any tension, any tightness. And I'm assuming there's quite a bit, in various places. And so the first thing you do is just open up to it and let it be there. You just let it be there. And then you see if there's any piece of you that's fighting or pushing against that. And if so, you relax the tension. But that's not the same as trying to get rid of the feeling itself. Because, in the Buddha's view of things, which to me seems to be pretty clear from all I can figure out in my own way, is that it's that little bit of tension that actually drives the difficulty. And as you relax that, the sense of there being a problem there begins to dissipate. And in that kind of expansiveness, it's easier to see the larger picture. There's this old Buddhist metaphor. It's like if you put a pinch of salt into a glass of water, it makes it so bitter you can't drink it. Well, and in the text it says, if you put the same pinch in the Ganges River, you don't even notice it's there. I've been to the Ganges, and all I can picture is a sewer, you know. So I usually think if you put a teaspoon of salt in a 5-gallon cistern, you know, you don't even notice it. So a lot of it is figuring out how to hold this question. So your worry about it, for example, I would just imagine, maybe I'm projecting, but the worry probably has at the core of it, well, some fear, but also some caring, right? You know? And so you get so focused on the fear, but if you just let the fear be there and open out, then the fear may stay there, but you connect with the caring as well. And if you can see with that, it's not like that makes a decision for you, but you just begin to see it all in a new light. Beneath all suffering, there's always tenderness. So if you can see and feel the tenderness, you know, within that. And if you can then relax into the tenderness, then you can begin to feel a little bit of spaciousness in it. Right? If there was not space inside, you'd be a brick. You wouldn't feel the tenderness. And if you relax into the spaciousness, well, that's a taste of freedom. You know? And we all want the freedom. We try to get there by running around all the tension and difficulty. It's not how it works. You just have to relax right through it. And then it opens out. And then it opens out.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
Can you feel all that? I think looking at you, looks like you do.
Yeah. Even like in the sitting and thinking about it, kind of asking myself, like, the sort of clearest answer was just to relax. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how can that be the answer? But, you know, how can it be that simple? But it does seem like the next step.
Yeah, and then when you relax into it, that doesn't necessarily give you a course, you know, it doesn't make a decision about what to do next, but it gives you a wiser, more heartfelt way to relate to whatever comes in the next moment, and the next, you know, and the next. You know, my experience is that, you know, life is, well, I think of it as like you're rolling foothills. You know, it's not a flat board. It's the route is not often straight, but it follows the contours. You know, and so you open up and it moves this way, and if you stay open to it, it may move that way and it may move that way. But at least you're fluid. You're fluid and flowing with it. Fluid. That's a good word.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Other people resonate with this?
Yeah, I was thinking that if you apply the 6 R's and you really go through the steps and really relax, and the mind can calm down, then the mind becomes wholesome and intuition has an opportunity to pop up. And when you react or respond from an wholesome mind, the decision will be wholesome also, I think.
It increases the odds at the very least. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's resonate with me is, you know, letting all the feelings and emotion to be there. You know, like lately, I've been myself, like personally feeling a bit of a tense and agitation, because my background is I migrated to Canada from Burma. So if you look at the news these days, I still have a lot of families over there, right? So like this worry arises, sometimes it's not so much of a anger, but it's kind of like this aversion or liking the situations or, wanting to be something happen. And sometimes just sit back, relax down and let it be. So all my worries, all my aversions, they are there. I can see that, but it has some separation between me and these, when I relax into it, right? Yeah, I've been practicing a lot in that sense, that way. Like 6 are in, like mostly like, okay, recognition part, and then just relax it down and letting go of it, but I just need to let them be there for a bit, right? And okay.
Yeah. So, in English, the word relax can have a slightly aversive connotation. Relax, man, let it go, etc. And so, I mean, I like the phrase you use in relaxing into, because it makes it just very clear. It's not relaxing as a way of getting away from it. And if there are situations that really do pull at your heartstrings, it's really it's just we are our evolutionary survival, our adaptation was actually to come together in groups. We don't have big claws or big teeth, so we come together in groups. So the the ancestors who didn't connect very well with people probably got eaten more easily, taken out by a bear or something. So it's actually bred into us to have, empathetic feelings towards other people, particularly ones we care about. And to take a model of spirituality that says, I've got to be untouched by everything, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so what you do, I think, is exactly what you were saying, is you relax into that. And if something's pulling at your heartstrings, it helps to shift your awareness away from the thought. Well, the first thing to do is to see if there's anything you can actually do in the moment that would be important for you to do. Like if somebody's meditating and they're all anxious because they think they may have left the tea kettle going on the stove, I'd say, don't 6R, go up and check the stove. Just the moment, let go of it, And then when you come back, and if you're in a place where there's nothing more you can do about it, and there's still tension and stuff in your system, that's when you start relaxing, and working with it and try to come into a wise relationship. But to have people you love in danger, to feel kind of indifferent and above it all, it's like that's not a way to live heartfully and clearly and peacefully in the world. If there's nothing you can do about it, then that may pull at your heart stuff, and then it's possible to relax in that. But that's not the same as dissociating.
It's true. It's like a true peace of mind is very rare in the world. So once you have it, it's appreciated, and
I'll tell you one of my quickest ways to cultivate that is I live near the American River, and so I can actually go out and walk along the river. And so I'm out there walking along the river, kind of all upset about something. And I look up, and there's this big tree, and the tree just doesn't give a hoot whether I'm feeling peaceful or, or agitated or anything else. And I look at the tree, and I think, I don't care that much whether I'm agitated or peaceful either. And then it just becomes easier.
Yeah.
So right now, let me ask you all this. Right now, as you're sitting here without doing anything, Can you feel back behind the activities in the mind and the heart and all that? A quiet, slightly luminous place. You can all feel, yeah. So in this meditation process, we're not trying to get anywhere where we're not already. You know, that quiet, luminous place that, you know, there may be all this agitation on top of it. And this quiet place doesn't jump up and down and draw our attention. So we tend to overlook it. But it's not that it's not there. You know, it's always there. Larry Rosenberg, I mentioned him earlier, he was a teacher in the Cambridge, Massachusetts. He used to say, everybody's trying to get from A to B. And he said, I'm just trying to get from A to A. So what else?
Thank you, Doug, for your insights. I have a question, which I think is very basic, but I've been struggling. I've been trying to get a...
All of us deal with these basic questions, you know. For those of you who have long practice, you know, we all deal with it. So when you're asking basic questions, it's like you're doing everybody else a favor.
I thank you for the encouragement. I feel like I've had a hard time maintaining a consistent practice, and you know, I've been meditating for about, you know, going on 4 years now, and it feels, I always feel like it goes through waves, and I would like for it to be consistent. So, you know, I mean, I practiced for 2 months. For 6 months, for almost 2 hours every day. I would just get up and sit, you know, and I was just pushing more and more time. And then all of a sudden, that just kind of dried up. Then it became a struggle to even do 1 hour. Then a struggle to do half an hour. Then I just wasn't doing anything for like a week at a time. And then it's like, I can't break my record. You go get back and just try to keep this consistent. And then even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's just half an hour, you know, but it felt like it didn't really count, because, you know, it's hard to get deep in 5 minutes. It's, you know, I mean, I know I'm not supposed to go anywhere, but it's pleasant to be in jhanas, right? So, and then I'm like, oh, that's craving, gotta let that go. Stop trying to make it an achievement out of your practice and go just ease back into it. But again, it was just very spotty, and I feel like I've just been unable to just get back on a regular track of just doing something every day. And then it's like, well, you have time to do it now. Why don't you do it now? Why are you watching TV? Like, why are you reading a book? Why are you doing this when you can be practicing right now? So I just feel like I'm stuck.
Yeah.
It's like I can mouth the answers, if you will, right? But it's all superficial. I'm just stuck.
Right. Anybody relate to that? So what you do is you get yourself a little wiffle bat, and every time you have one of those thoughts, you just hit yourself on it. Oh, but you're doing that already, actually. You don't even need the wiffle bat, right? So, you know, we can be such cruel taskmasters, you know, for ourselves. You know, first of all, if you try to summarize the whole of the Buddha's teachings in one word, what do you think that would be?
Letting go.
Pardon?
Letting go.
Letting go. That's good. What are some other possibilities?
I'm going to go with relax.
Relax.
Peacefulness.
Peacefulness.
To see clearly.
Pardon?
To see clearly.
See clearly.
And
Also-
metta.
Pardon?
Sorry.
Metta. Yeah. All those are great answers.
Accept.
But I think If you were to narrow it all down to one word, the word would be process. Everything is in process, right? You know, rising and falling, anicca, impermanence, dependent origination is about how things change. Everything is process. This was the primary, you know, insight of the Buddha. It's a little complicated because there's no word in Pali for process. So how do you describe something you don't have a word for? English has a higher percentage of nouns than just about any other language, and Pali has a higher percentage of verbs. So if you take what you're saying about your practice and try to change it into a verb like a gerund, your mind is working a little bit more the way the Buddhists did. So we all want our practice to be stable and unchanging. And the primary insight of the Buddha is everything is always changing. So there is a good way to get it to stop changing. And that is to die. As long as we are alive, things are going to be changing and moving, etc., etc. And so, I mean, I'm just playing around with all this because I think it's really, really helpful to embrace the change. And of course, when you do one sitting, you know, it affects the next sitting, it affects the next sitting. And particularly if there's a little bit of striving or an idea, I've got to get someplace, then that will gradually accumulate until hopefully your body will break out in hives and reject the whole deal. And, you know, and so that may be wanting to move around or do all kinds of things. So it's very natural for our practice to change a lot. And the question is just how do you relate to it in a way that's wholesome? Right?
I was hearing you saying how everything changes, and that made sense. And then I thought to myself, maybe I should think of it as a trend. Like, is it trending up, like consistent, or is it trending down? And then I thought, wait a minute,
it's still got
don't think of it trending.
Yeah, but I think as you know, so one way to ask the question is what's going on right now. The other way to ask the question is how are things changing right now? And what you'll find if you get really intrigued by all that, it's like, oh, how are things changing now? Well, when you're out walking around, there's so much changing going on, it's really hard to see that and say, okay, well, maybe let me just sit quietly here for a little bit and see if I can see more clearly how things are flowing. Well, and right away, you're moving back into meditation. It just may be that what we're really secretly most interested in is not seeing how life is, but getting our life to a certain kind of static nirvana. You know, it doesn't exist. It just is not there. And so what you want to do, you know, when you're ready is say, okay, I'll sit down here for a few minutes and I'm not going to get anywhere. There's no place for me to go. But I just want to see with as much clarity as I can what's going on. And so if the mind is jumping around, rather than try to get the mind to stop jumping, it's like, oh, it's, you know, jumping is happening. And you watch the jumping, and then you see it enough, and you'll gradually begin to see, well, there's a lot of tension in the jumping. And if you notice the tension, it's almost like if you hold a fist and you want to keep it tight, you sort of have to hold it behind your back and forget it's there. Because if you put too much awareness in it, it hurts, and it'll just relax, you know, all by itself, you know. So as you notice the stuff moving around, you begin to notice some tension in it. And then the system will naturally want to relax the tension a little bit. And so there you're off, you're moving in the 6 R's, or what I call the 3 essential practices, which are turning towards, relaxing into, and savoring. Those are based on the first three noble truths. Suffering is to be understood. You're not going to understand something unless you're facing towards it and seeing it and taking it. Tanha, attention, is to be abandoned, is the second noble truth. How do you abandon tension? You relax. And as Kim was saying, relax is a little confusing, so it's relax into. The third one is nibbana, is to be realized. Nibbana is a deep state of quiet and equanimity, just like what we all noticed inside ourselves was there all the time. How do you realize that? How do you make it real? You just savor it. You just like take it in. So it's a long way around your question, because it's a crucial question that comes up a lot with how do we relate to our difficulties in the practice? And the answer is just be more aware of them. Just be more aware of them. Anytime we get stuck, there is probably something subtler going on underneath that we're not seeing and that we're not openly embracing. So this is dependent origination I'm talking about right now. Dependent origination says that everything arises out of causes and conditions. It is very much concerned with the subtler conditions underneath that give rise to the grosser ones. So if you're getting stuck a lot, you do the practice and you just go, you keep on going back to getting stuck. There's probably something subtler going on underneath that you're overlooking. And so you just ask, well, what am I missing? Well, I'm a little ticked off because I find sitting down to meditate a little annoying. Well, that's not acceptable thought in Buddhist circles, but let's get real. There's sometimes I get a little annoyance at the practice or something, and if you can just be real with what's going on and open up to it, then I'm not saying that's what your issue was, but if you have something like that underneath, it gets room to breathe and expand and open up, and as that happens, you can see the space beyond that, and you're back sort of moving into a more traditional type of practice.
No, that makes sense. If I'm being completely honest, I sometimes I wish I didn't have to practice anymore. Like I could just be done, right? Like I can use those 2 hours and do something else. Or the thought that it feels like I need this constant maintenance every day. And if I don't get that much time in, or do too little, or don't do enough, that something's gonna go wrong. It's just tiring. And it would just be nice if I didn't have to do this anymore. If I'm making this up, if after 2 years of doing this, now I'm done.
Right.
And just, I could relax, but it feels like, no, you have to do this, or, nothing's gonna work out, or, you're not gonna get, you're not gonna get to Nibbana if you don't do this. Just be nice not to have to do that.
Yeah, so it's like saying, just strive more. When I was practicing in Thailand, I got these instructions, that were just, to strive hard. There was no such thing as putting too much effort in the practice. And I said, my teachers say that I strive too much. I said, no, there's no such thing as too much. So I went off, and I'm a Taurus, I know how to strive, and I do that, and I just, and I came back for my next interview, and I told him what was going on, what I was doing, and his eyes got wider and wider and wider, and he said, go take a walk, buy some ice cream. And I realized that he had been talking, that it was as if he was talking to a Thai person, not a Westerner. And I don't know, I found the Thai to be some of the sweetest, mellowest, kindest. They would never strive. They need a little more edge in practice. We don't, most of us don't need more edge. We need to relax more. So what you do is that when you notice that, I just got to get more, notice the striving. You can 6 hours is not about getting rid of anything. Recognize there's the striving, relax into the striving. A little peacefulness comes up, savor it. work with the process underneath it. I would also say that whatever comes up, there is probably some wisdom in it. It may be 90% wisdom and 10% delusion, or maybe 90% delusion and 10% wisdom. But it's really helpful to see what the wisdom is in it. In your case, the wisdom might be, look, I'm just going at this way too hard. And if you can kind of get what the wisdom is, then sometimes you can find wiser ways to work with the wisdom. There may be more skillful ways to do that, but until you recognize, the goodness of the wisdom that's within it, then we're left in a battle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good.
But I have I don't know, I'm born Buddhist, Theravada Buddhist. And what I do is when I feel I don't want to do the meditation and things like that, I don't know whether it's applicable or not. We used to do the Pali chanting. Just I put the one video, I'm not watching that. The rhythm, I will focus on the rhythm maybe 5-10 minutes. I go to deep concentration. Whenever I feel I don't want to do that, it makes me to start. Then once it's that finished, I can see my mind is become very calm and peaceful.
Yeah.
Whatever
So there is this well, in the West we say balance between mind and heart, as if mind and heart are separate. They really aren't. And I find, chanting and some of those things actually bring up sort of more of the heart energy and can help balance things out. And the Theravada practice, as we're learning it with kind of sitting quietly, etc., can really go into straining more, and bringing the heart element in can be helpful. And I think that's one of the reasons that the metta practice is so helpful, because it does stay in that form of meditating, but it's intentionally bringing more of the heart energy in there at the same time. And there are different practices that'll work more effectively for us at different times. So I'm a great believer in empirical trials. If you're not sure about something, give it a try and pay attention to the data. Try something a little different and see how it works. That's a little heretical in some circles, but I'm sorry. Who was speaking there?
Yes, me.
Hi.
I'm not very clear with the relaxed step. Somewhere I feel like, okay, recognize, release, those seem to be like very visible in a way. When I come to smile also is okay, return is also okay. Relax somehow, it seems to elude me somewhere. I'm not sure whether I relaxed or not.
Yeah. So you're breaking up a little bit. So what I got was you're saying that, particularly in the 6 R's, the first 2 R's work well for you, but the relaxed state is,
Yes.
a little bit eludes you.
Yes.
Some of the difficulty with relax may be in the word itself. It has different connotations for different people. And for some people, the relax can have a little bit of striving in it. Sometimes I would say soften instead. The third step, whatever you call it, is a little bit different than the other 5, because to recognize is just an awareness. To release, is just to let it go for the sake of awareness. To smile or bringing uplifted qualities is just to allow the mind to open out so it can see better and return to that practice. The return just goes back to sending out metta. But the relax step, or the soften step, is the one place where you're actually doing something, which is, well, in the text, it's abandon the tension. And what the Buddha saw was that the tension, the tanha, is the engine that drives our suffering.
Okay.
And so we can do all kinds of things that we could waste our energy, lots of things, which he was encouraged us not to do. But there is this one thing about relaxing the tanha, relaxing the tension, because that's the force that causes the suffering. And so it's a very narrow little thing they're doing, and you're not wasting your energy on other things. Then it becomes easier to do. And what it does is it doesn't stop the suffering per se, but what it does is it allows the energy that's driving the suffering to burn out and relax, in which case the peacefulness that is already there, can come forward. So I would look at the relaxed step, think of it more as an invitation. So I'm a striver, so I have to watch for that in myself. But I ended up with, it wasn't exactly these words, but it was something to the effect of saying to this system that I seem to be living within, if you want to back off and relax a little bit, it's okay. But I wasn't trying to push it to relax, because I could easily do that, But it's just this invitation, if it would feel good, it's okay to take your foot off the gas a little bit here, and allow that to soften. And that is actually, it's the core of the Buddhist practice.
Yes.
Is abandoning the tanha. So it's very important. But I think it's helpful to play around with it a little bit and to find some way to get it to work for you. And it's just true for us, if we do the same thing over and over again, it starts to go a little bit, and it starts to get dry. And so, to allow it to shift around and find a way to let it come alive, let it moisten, not be quite so dry.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I address your question?
Yes.
Okay.
You did. Yes, you did. Thank you. That phrase that you said, that's the driving force, that has made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's like the tension in our system has got a certain amount of fuel. And that's why when we're really busy and we sit down and want to meditate, like a Buddha, you probably can't do it in a few months. In a few minutes, there's just so much momentum in the energy. And so at first when we sit down, it's just creating the space in which the energy can run itself out. And if you sit down after a busy day and the mind is busy, you can say, "Oh, I want it to be quiet," or you can also say, "Oh, of course. Look what I've been doing all day. Of course, it's going to be busy." And you just give it the space to let the energy run itself out. And then, when the energy runs itself out, the mind falls back into its natural peacefulness. And then it's very stable because you're not actually doing anything, right? If you try to create a peaceful mind by holding the mind still, that may work for a while, but as soon as you relax the holding, then it starts running around again. But if you relax it just by softening everything, then when the peacefulness comes up, it's not conditioned on anything.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let me ask Kim and Austin. So do you have 10 minutes left? Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
Like take as long as you need, but yeah.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that, and if people need to move on, and if some of us want to talk, we can go on a little longer. But it's a crime close to original sin to run overtime in our culture. So
We're just worried about your time more than our time.
hey, the sun is just starting to come up here, so it's so I'm fine.
Yeah.
Hi, Doug.
Hi.
I'm Helen. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Helen.
I say something about your, like, I resonate very well with the flow, the word that you were using earlier. That float, I was thinking that, like, if we can float in that, can I relate that to also the relax part? Like, but it's like we have to notice the float of what the even though like the practice that the Homer was addressing the breaking down of our practice, which I do have the same experience too. Like I'm not able to do a very full consistent sitting every day on a regular basis. I'm still working on it, but I see myself like if I float into it like better, which we were using the word, and I see myself like a little bit more easier to be finding more interest. So there's also one thing I want to share. Like I would like to flow into the easiness of like not like there is some mornings that I really wasn't able to be. I have some ailment. I noticed why behind like the things that I was not able to do that. So I was relaxing actually, but I know that I shouldn't. I should be having more determination. But is this the way that we should be more addressing as a flow into the that the process that you just mentioned, like is right now I'm not in that mode of like I have to be at that 6 o'clock there in the morning, so I let myself a little bit at ease, and then maybe the time allows I leave it to 8 o'clock, or even I skip. I actually was having a week or two that I have some like a bodily ailment that I wasn't able to do it in the time that I was planning to. So I let it at ease. I just think that okay, I just want to take it easy. So I don't know if that's the approach, or what do you address to that? Yeah.
Well, some of it is just to realize that we have a limited amount of control over our lives. It has some influence, and so I want to look more at the influence. So we all want a quiet mind, and so I think, well, don't think about a green rooster. So how many of you have a green rooster in your mind? It's like you don't have control of your mind, right? And so what you want to do is just relate to it wisely, and the mind can be trained out of habit. And so what I would say is probably the most important part of practice is to, well, I don't want to make this sound harsh, but actually to sit every day. And if you can only sit for 5 minutes, because what you do if you sit every day, even if it's just for a few minutes, you begin to build up a habit, and it's sort of an expectation in your system that you're going to sit. And if you push it, it gets hard, and this whole system rebels against it. But if what you tell yourself is, oh, no, I don't have time to sit for 5 minutes, then I would just look at that thought and I would say, really? Is that really true? Or is that just, something else that's coming up there? So I would sit every day, not rigidly. Sometimes it does come up that you don't you go to sit down and the fire alarm goes on. I mean, who knows? So if you skip it completely every once in a while, it's fine. Don't beat yourself up. But I would say sit every day. And if you don't sit every day, then be kind to yourself about it. And just realize that you're actually, you're cultivating a practice. And you want to cultivate with gentleness and ease, not pushing too hard. And what I find is that even if it feels like difficult to get myself to sit down, once I'm sitting down, for 5 minutes, then I can easily go to 10. I go a little bit longer. But you may want to sometimes just stick it to 5, so that the mind knows that you're not tricking it, that you really can do it for a short amount of time. But just a little bit to get in the habit of a rhythm of starting. The way it was explained to me early on was there was 2 types of samadhi, of concentration. There's actually beginning to settle, and then there's holding it for a long period of time. And doing either one creates this capacity to sit longer. So just even sitting for a few minutes, just bringing the whole system to that is really very helpful. And I would say that it is simply difficult to sit with a whole lot of consistency until it becomes a habit. And so the question is how to wisely cultivate a habit, and it's not pushing it.
I already find interest, so I hope that would help. Like I noticed that there is interest into the sitting. It's just that the consistency of doing it on a like a regular 2 hours or 3 hours a day is a little bit still not on the track. Like I was able to sit at least for half an hour or to an hour, but then that is still that framework there. That's an hour plus, and I wasn't able to be very continuously on to the next hour, which I see myself like I have to build up to. So, but I wasn't wanting to push it. That's what I was asking. Like, should I just leave it as a flow, like until I can? Maybe in the retreats I'm forced to, I have to make myself. So there are some days that I know that when I'm forced to, I can maybe, but when I'm not, then I just let myself relax a bit. So I wasn't sure it's like the way to treat the daily practice.
Yeah. So when you're on retreat, you're actually sitting a lot of momentum builds up, and you can run on that. But in daily practice, you're getting stirred up and all kinds of things that are going on. And in daily practice, for a lot of people, they say, okay, I'm going to sit for 2 hours every day. When you sit down, the mind may slightly freak out. 2 hours? You gotta be kidding me. And so you want to go at it more gently. And let it be a smaller amount. And I would also say, notice why you're sitting when you start sitting, and notice what's going on when you stop sitting. And just be very aware of it. So it's like, I'm sitting there and I think I've got to stay for another 45 minutes and I'm gritting my teeth, and I said, I just don't want to do that anymore. But just notice that there's gritting the teeth, there's aversion, and just kind of open up and welcome all of that, so that you're not conditioning yourself to freak out when you sit down. And sometimes you'll say, okay, this is enough. I've got to get up and say, okay, I'll just watch, see what that feeling is. I want to get up and realize, oh, that's actually okay. I don't need to. It was just a trip that was going on ahead. And then you may go on and sit a little bit longer, or you might not. You want to befriend the mind. You don't want to treat it like a naughty dog that's got to be beaten with a stick. Ajahn Chah Ajahn Chai, the Thai forest master, had this wonderful image of meditation. He said, you have a house. It's got 5 windows and 1 door, 1-room house, 5 windows and 1 door, and there's 1 chair right in the center of it. And your job is to sit down in the 1 chair. And as you do that, the five windows, 5 senses, the mind door, all kinds of things are going to come in and out of your house. And your job is to welcome all of them, to greet all of them and welcome, and not get out of your seat. So you have both this wide open, welcoming, and you just stay in the seat. And then all these wandering thoughts will come in, and they look around and they're welcomed and they feel comfortable, and then they realize that there's only 1 chair and it's empty, and they'll leave. You're not sending them off, but they just leave. Mm. And I found that as a very sort of helpful metaphor to look at what we're doing. Welcome what comes in, but stay present. Be aware of the present. And by be aware of the present, I mean notice the process that's going on. Thinking, worrying, pushing, pulling, whatever that is. Not the content of the mind, but the process. Because the process is always in the present. Wiggling, debating whether to get up. Debating, never mind to get up, just debating. Feel the debating, how that feels. Open up to it, soften.
Okay. Thank you very much for the metaphor. I think that helps me to be able to extend the timing. That was what I was starting to get when it's an hour over. I thought that it's about maybe I want to sit up. I mean, I don't want to get up, and maybe that thought that allowing it just to be whatever, even though it is thoughts coming in, I can still sit, right? So that is a good one there. Thank you very much.
Somebody,
thank you very much, Dad.
The turn to this century, somebody asked once, what was the most impactful invention of the 20th century? And a good case could be made for the wristwatch. Because before people had wristwatches, they didn't really know what time it was. But now we all, it's like we try to run our lives on a train schedule down to the minute. And so there's something about meditation where you can loosen up, the flow of time. And sometimes for me, the best way to do that is actually to set a timer. Because if I don't have a timer, I'll worry about it all the time. But if I'm confident, the timer will let me know, and then maybe it rings and I may sit longer or something.
Actually, I find that Bhante was right in this sense that actually we know that this is about that hour, because you set your time set in that, always that thought of the hour. I always know that this is that hour. I don't have a timer, but I always know that this is about the time of an hour. I start to get agitated, and that is how maybe I should set my time in 1.5 hours. Should we do that? This is maybe a little trick to ourselves to see, instead of maybe that was the mindset that I was always thinking an hour. I always at an hour, I get I want to get out. Is that something would be also another thing that that our mind that has been trained to think? I don't have a timer, but about 1 hour, I want to get up. It was very.
Yeah, you can condition yourself to that. And so it can be helpful to sit for 45 minutes and sit for 1 hour and 15 minutes if you want to break that up. Bhante just temperamentally is very, very mellow. And, and I have that time sense too. But I was trained to be a worrier. And so Bhante can sit more easily and not worry about it. So so if you're a worrier too, sometimes rather than battle with the worrying, you can just set a timer. But it doesn't sound like that bothers you. So so more power to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Thank you.
So thank you all for inviting me. It's lovely to be here with you. Can we take just a couple moments? I know I've run over, like I said I wouldn't, but just if you need to go, it's fine. Blessings. And if you want to just take another minute or two here, just come back and again, see if you notice. Again, it's this quiet place behind all the busyness of the mind that is just peaceful and that doesn't jump up and down to draw our attention, but is just quiet and slightly luminous. And just see if you notice that. And whether you see that or feel it or not, just imagining, if you don't see it, from that quiet, luminous place, just gently sending that quiet energy, slightly glowing energy, out to all the other people in our Sangha here this morning. And out around the world and around the whole planet. May all beings know their deeper essence. May all beings know their spaciousness. May all beings know freedom. May all beings be happy. May it be so. Blessed be. And I can hang around for a little bit longer if people want to talk a little bit more, but the day has begun. And if you have other things to get to, go in peace.
Any more questions?
I do have a question if you don't mind.
No.
Oh, you had your one shot. You gotta be quiet.
Yeah. We're in the new hour.
Yes.
I know this is probably overthinking it, but I feel like sometimes I feel like I get mixed messages. Like on the one hand, they say, throw away the timer, just relax and let your meditation goes where it wants to. And then on the other hand, it's, if you practice for 1 hour, you maintain what you achieved. And if you really want to progress, you need to do at least 2 hours every day, So on the one hand, it's the, just relax, what happens, happens, and that's good, and let it naturally arise. And on the other hand, it's, well, if you want to progress, then you need to, increase your time, increase your sitting, right? You're not going to get deeper if you don't increase your time. And so, and if those two hands are not enough, then this little third hand comes up where it's like, if you're smiling throughout the day, everywhere you walk, you could be in a jhana and you can radiate all the time. And that feels just as helpful, and I feel like I've made progress doing that as well, right? So now I feel like, okay, so what is it? Do I need to increase my time, or once in a while increase my time, or do I just, meditate and whatever happens, forget the timer, forget the watch? Or can I just cultivate my practice more? Am I walking, when I'm walking my dog, when I'm driving, and, in my daily routine with the smile and the radiating? So again, I know it might be overthinking, but I just feel like there's so much there, and I just feel like,
Yes. So there's a very simple answer to your question. The answer is yes. Wisdom grows out of experience. Cleverness grows out of thinking things out, but wisdom actually grows out of our experience. So I'm a great believer in empirical trials. Try it. See what happens when you push to sit longer. See what happens when you sit shorter. See what happens when you radiate during the day. See what happens. And then the most important thing about empirical trials is to pay attention to the data. You know, it's like, see what the effect that it has on you. And so, you know, when you try, you know, different things, different amount of pushing, different amount of relaxation, the Buddha stuff always comes out as a kind of a middle way, as a, you know, it's neither extreme. And so if I'm somebody that strives a lot, you know, a little bit of striving just kind of puts me way off the edge over there. But a whole lot of relaxation may actually bring me back, you know, to the middle, bring it back in a balanced way. It'll feel like laziness. But experiment and then see what happens. You know, risk being a little lazy and see what happens. Risk pushing too much and see what happens. Because it's with that willingness to go over. What I like to say is, you don't stay on the straight and narrow, but you want to fall off each side of the road about equal number of times. And then you know where the road is. You know where the middle path is. But if you try to just get it right and stick with it, then you won't know. So I would say, you know, experiment with all of that and see what it is. If you do that, you know, heartfully and you know, and clearly, the practice will grow itself. You'll just be drawn to do more. And then there'll be times when you're agitated, not as much, and you do less, and you feel yourself drawn back. Play with it. And I use the word play very intentionally. You know, it's with a light spirit. Play with it and try and see what the truth is about how it comes up, you know, in your life. Knowing that that truth is the truth for that moment. It may not be the truth for the next moment, but it is a data point.
Yeah, you're making me realize that I seem to be hell-bent on getting it right.
Yes.
And that's a kind of attachment in and of itself. And if I were to play with it, relax, then it could come up. The practice will grow naturally, and you know, there'll be space for intuition. And I guess what I'm doing now is all this overthinking, over-attachment, you know, and that's the block.
And I would say the real play in it is that sometimes you relax and sometimes you intentionally be hell-bent.
Right.
Because the difficulty is not being hell-bent, but it's being hell-bent and not realizing you're hell-bent. But if you intentionally do hell-bent, you know, then you'll know what that feels like, and it'll become a very familiar state. And, you know, and then the system will naturally back off to a more balanced place. Yeah, play with it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Any more questions or comments?
And also just notice what the quality of your mind heart is as we sit here quietly together. And if you're in Kim's role as being a little bit of the MC, you know, there's a right. There's a little bit, you want to give people permission to keep people comfortable, and you just notice that it's not a. I mean, it's a lovely sentiment and a generous impulse, but you see it for what it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kim.
Oh, you're welcome.